Hello and welcome to this episode of Demystified as we explore home cooking in a modern world. Hello, I'm Linda and I'm here with my friend Paul. Hello, Paul.
Hello. Everyone must be sick of us by now.
I don't think they are.
No.
Well, not already.
We need to get some special guests in.
Well, we're trying. It's just difficult over this separation. But since the world has turned to custard, Paul, why don't we talk custards today?
Let's talk custard. Awesome. What do you want to know?
Well, I'm always...
You're driving this ship, lady.
That's always a bit dangerous. But no, I was just thinking over the weekend about the times when I'm looking at different recipes and they say use a water bath or they don't, or there's different things that you can put into a sous vide machine in little jars with lids. And I thought, well, maybe this is something that if you don't have a sous vide specialist machine or even just the prod that you put
circulator.
in. Thank you. Yep. See, that's why we have you around, Paul. Not just your sunny personality. But
on a Monday morning at 8:15, you can basically get stuffed.
Oh, thanks so much. But back into cooking, and I just wondered, are there definite times when you do need to have something when you're cooking immersed in water, or can the steam oven, if you have a steam setting low enough, actually replace that in all time? Or is there a rule, or can you think of anything that will help our listeners out there adapt a recipe from a sous vide into their steam oven?
Well, if we go back, you've asked about two different topics, really.
Oh, there you are. Okay, then. Well, let's go. I'll sit back now.
Well, if we specifically talk about custard, and let's talk about, we've talked about eggs before, but egg-based custards, which are most, there are a few custards, of course, that aren't egg-based. And let's start with what I would call is traditional, and it's probably getting to your point about Bain Marie cooking and stuff, something like a creme brulee. Okay, so the reason that you put something in a Bain Marie is to help even out the temperature in the oven. Because when you turn an oven on, your temperature, or the heat, because heat and temperature are two different things. Got to remember that as well.
It is Monday morning, Paul. I'm not sure.
The heat is coming from a singular source, either surrounding the fan shroud if you've got a fan forced oven, and if you're working on a fan forced, or underneath, like at the bottom of your oven or at the top of your oven. There is different heating elements within the oven, and that's where the heat comes from. The point of a Bain Marie is so that heat isn't as direct and harsh. So it also assists with keeping at a regular, constant temperature, because heating in an oven works in like a duty cycle. So it might be on for a minute, off for a minute, on for 2 minutes, off for 2 minutes, depending on what's happening in the oven, what volume you've got. A lot of factors come into play there. How well it's sealed, if it's letting air in, how much air it's letting out. Like, there are a lot of factors at play there. So a Bain Marie, and the idea behind it is to help even out the temperature and make sure that temperature and the heat isn't as direct and as harsh. So in the case of doing a custard a la a creme brulee, which traditionally, and I did for eons, like I can't even begin to tell you how many creme brulees I've made, was always done in a Bain Marie at somewhere between sort of 140 and 160 degrees centigrade. Now, why do it in your steam oven? Again, it comes down to, well, can you? Yes. Why? Because egg-based custards, and if we take a stovetop type custard like a creme anglaise, which is the basis for like an ice cream, Um, you can almost treat it in the same fashion. Custards will set from an egg somewhere around 82 to 87 degrees, somewhere in there, depending on the eggs and temperature and various other variables. So why do it in a steam oven? As we've explained before, steam carries heat and temperature 8 times more efficiently than dry heat. So it's certainly more efficient, but it's more efficient at carrying the temperature, and it's more efficient at a constant temperature. So the Bain Marie example is to help give you consistency in temperature. Not only that, but also make sure things don't dry out as well. But it's about consistency in temperature across that entire tray where you've got 6 brulees. You want a consistent temperature because you don't want the back that is closer to the heating element, let's say, to get cooked before the front. So it's about consistency in temperature. Now, given that steam carries temperature better, it's also more consistent because anything water-based is going to be more consistent. So your example of sous vide is certainly, that's a water-based cooking medium, and the reason that it works is because water carries temperature with movement better than almost any other element. So it's a really long answer with probably not too many specifics, but nonetheless, egg-based custards, absolutely you can do. Eggs, we've talked about before, but custards in general, a lot of the recipes that we will do, which are just standalone steam recipes, you'll find are, and there's even savoury ones as well, like recently did a Japanese sort of egg-based custard. They're those custard type recipes, so brulee, creme caramel, leche flan, there's quite a few of them because it is the way to get a perfect custard. You want that silky, not cooked. You know what I mean? Like you want it cooked, but you don't want it baked.
Panna cotta?
No, well, panna cotta is different.
Okay.
So panna cottas are, so the translation of panna cotta is cooked cream, and panna cotta is set 9 times out of 10 with gelatin. I did a sort of hack version of a panna cotta in a steam oven, which I don't think from memory was gelatin based, but panna cotta's on your stovetop and gelatin's your setting agent. I haven't seen many recipes, maybe the hack one that I did, but I haven't seen many recipes with egg. You very rarely see egg in panna cotta. So panna cotta's a different beast. Would you call it a custard? I wouldn't.
Okay.
Well, it hasn't got eggs. Custard for me has got eggs.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, yeah, Bain Marie cooking, while I don't think you need it if you have a steam oven. There you go. I don't think you need to worry about Bain Marie style cooking if you have a steam oven.
Okay.
Because what other things do you do in a Bain Marie? We used to do terrines.
Mm-hmm.
So, like a pork terrine or a chicken terrine or a lot of terrines because they were quite deep, as in the height of them was quite deep. There's a lot of volume in there. There's a lot of weight. And you didn't want it baked and drying out. So you'd use the Bain Marie to help the oven stay relatively moist but give you consistent temperature. So terrines are another one where you'd go, okay, we'll use a Bain Marie, we'll set it nice and low, consistent low temperature. It's not going to dry out. We're not going to end up with a baked meatloaf. We're going to end up with it's almost like poaching, really. Bain Marie cooking is almost like poaching, except you generally have a container or a pan or something in between the water and your ingredient. So it's kind of like poaching. But terrines, I've had like super huge success with terrines. Terrines are an undertaking. Like, I think they're worth every second. But doing a terrine on a steam cycle rather than on a regular fan-forced conventional in a Bain Marie. Because, we've talked also a lot about how steam is quite forgiving as well, and that's exactly the same case with this. If you're doing your brulee in a Bain Marie and your oven's set at 140, 150, if it's 5 minutes too long, scrambled eggs. Yeah, it's really a small window before it goes from good to going in the bin. It's pretty rubbish. So, whereas steam gives you leniency, it gives you time to make mistakes.
Mm.
So and that's the other appealing part of it to me, is being able to go, okay, well, in the case of a brulee, if I'm busy doing something else, or any custard for that matter, if I'm busy doing something else, because the heat is, although it's more efficient, it's a gentler heat and it holds temperature better, and we're not working at temperatures above, like if we're doing our brulees, we're probably doing them at 80, somewhere between 80 and 85 degrees. We know that temperature will set that brulee, so it cooks the egg, but it doesn't overcook it. So if we leave it in there a bit too long, it's kind of the similar theory to sous vide. If we leave it in there too long, I mean, eventually, because ovens all have fluctuations in temperature, eventually it may well, but there's less likelihood that 5-10 minutes is going to damage it beyond repair. But that, I've got to say, varies a lot amongst oven manufacturers. So the ability to control temperature with steam is pretty variable.
Okay, so the more recent oven is more accurate.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like anything.
Exactly.
So anything that you've seen done Bain Marie cooking, and I'm just trying to think off the top of my head what we used to do as a regular, like in the restaurants and stuff. I mean, terrines was certainly one. Things like brulees or custards in general were another one. But anything that you would do like that, you just need to find what the set temperature is of whatever it is that you're cooking. If it's an egg-based custard, it's going to be somewhere between 80 and 90 degrees. It depends on a lot of the other ingredients that you add, but it'll be somewhere in there. So why not set your oven to that? Why try and time it perfectly at 140 degrees, or 150, 160 degrees? You've got to time that bad boy perfectly to pull it out at exactly the right time. Because you've also got carryover heat as well. So when it comes out of the oven, it still continues to heat. So yeah, my theory behind it is cook at the set temperature, as in the temperature where your custard, in this case, is going to set. So we know our custard's going to set 85, 86, somewhere in there.
And that sort of 5-10 minute leeway, you think would cover off most emergencies, give you a chance to come back, turn off the oven, take it out if it was past its time, without ruining it.
But the other thing I want to say is recipes like that are guidelines. There's no perfect recipe. So I've been doing the same brulee recipe, which was sort of handed down to me for years and years and years. And 98 times out of 100 it works, but there's always those two times out of 100 that something goes awry or something's a bit wrong, and it's generally the eggs.
Okay.
You got to remember, eggs are different in winter than they are in summer.
Even if they come out of the fridge.
Yeah. Eggs are like think about the chickens. Yeah, so egg yolks especially are quite different in the way they react when you're cooking with them, especially in winter, versus like a summer or a spring egg.
How so?
I don't know the science behind it, and I don't know that chickens are designed to lay the entire year. Maybe we need to get a chicken farmer in here to tell us, or an egg farmer in here to tell us, but I don't know. But certainly I've found that it can be difficult at times to get, let's say, a recipe that you've had super success with, and you do exactly the same thing in winter. It might not set, or it might not set the same way. It might take a little bit more cooking or a little bit more temperature.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it needs a bit longer.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's sometimes, So that's why recipes are a guideline. Yeah, they really are. You still need to look at your food, and that's why programs in ovens are difficult. Like, and I'm
Yes.
in a
Well,
position where I actually have to write some of them, and writing a pre-programmed recipe within an oven, especially for something like an egg-based custard, can be difficult because depending on the time of year, it might change. Now, the result might change. Now, if that happens and you work for a manufacturer and you've written a program, you want it to be consistent no matter where it is in the world and no matter what time of year it is. But there are things outside of your control. So, like eggs are different in winter. I'm absolutely convinced about it.
well, maybe we should look around for an egg farmer, but interesting, because I've never noticed that, but I do know, and we have brought this up before, that with my oven, and I know mine's very different, the programs to what you're writing now, that I lost confidence in it because I don't think at the time my book that came with my oven was written, that little pamphlet. I don't think people really understood them as well as they do now. But, when my recipe book says get a packet cake mix and try that, I thought, well, no, not really. But the times are different. And I've noticed over the years that as my knowledge gets better, that some of the recipes in there, the timing does look wrong. And so I know that the books that come out now with some of the more modern ovens are better, but I'm still a bit wary about pre-programmed because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, people are trying to write better programs, but nonetheless, the point being is if you're going to if you're going to take let's say a traditional recipe that uses a Bain Marie style of cooking, just keep an eye on it. Like, it's really difficult because I know everyone wants to just be able to bung something in the oven and for master chef quality food to come out. That's not always the way. I mean, a lot of it comes down to, and I've said this before as well, a lot of it comes down to your preparation beforehand. Good preparation beforehand will more likely than not give you a better end result. It's not just what happens. The cooking part of it in an oven is a much smaller part. It's the preparation before and things like resting after and understanding temperature and your knowledge before you actually start. And for the brief amount of time that it's in the oven, you don't have any control over what's happening there. It's about the only time that you don't have control. I mean, the only control that you have is being able to adjust the temperature and the depending on what oven function you're using, but you can control the temperature and the oven function. But they're the two things. But you can't control the reaction of the food. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many recipes that we've done and I've written, and a differing result that you'll get from, let's say, starting at room temperature versus fridge cold. Like, we've had people say to us, "Can I cook straight from the freezer?" You
and I have been to a demo where that happened, and
it
was a disaster.
Yeah. So back to sort of original question around sous vide cooking and particularly, I mean, seeing as we've titled this, The World's Gone to Custard, any custard-based recipe is an absolute must-try in your steam oven. And do it on a steam-only function if you can. So just if you can get within 5 degrees of what the set point is, you'll pretty much get there. Say brulees, leche flans, even just doing like little potted eggs, or I mean, that was one of the first things.
I still do those. Yeah, I still do those.
Little, potted eggs, anything like that. It's really worth having a go.
Potted eggs are fantastic, and I think I've said this before that when we used to be able to have people over, and you sort of try to make brekkie for a few people, and they're just great. They go into the oven, they come out, they look great, they taste great. You've got time to get toast going, coffee going, juice going, everything else happening, and they're just cooking away nicely.
Yeah. So, I mean, certainly any sort of Bain Marie egg-based custard is, Don't change the way you prep it. All you're doing is maybe changing the way you cook it. If you have an oven that gets wet, like really wet, might be worth covering it. The top, I think originally we covered a lot of stuff. Now not so much.
Yeah.
So if you're getting a lot of condensation within your oven that's dripping down onto your custard, that's something to avoid. Because that water going into, let's say, I'm just using a brulee as an example, into a brulee will actually assist in turning it into scrambled eggs. So you don't want that water going in there. So if you do find that you've got a lot of condensation in your oven, just cover it. And generally you can cover it with cling film.
I can absolutely attest to that. I used to be a bit nervous that cling film would somehow melt or stick or something bad would happen, but it doesn't. It's quite
and we're working at
tough.
Sub 100 degree temperatures generally. Over 100 degrees, who knows?
Yeah, but
and it's not dry heat. So it's not we're not baking it. We're just using it as a protective coating. If you're really worried about doing that, then maybe foil is an alternative. But you can't seal foil that well, and the problem with that is that if your foil isn't perfectly sealed, water will get underneath it and will build condensation underneath the foil, and that condensation will, because remember you're applying heat, and what you've got in there is steaming, so it's going to create its own little bit of steam that will catch that condensation on the top of the foil and then drop down onto you.
At first, I mean, it just seemed like I'd only ever, for as long as I'd had cling film, ever put it on the bench, in a cupboard, or in the fridge. So putting it into the oven was like, what?
Yeah, but I mean, people cover stuff and put it in their microwave, and that's intense power. Maybe not heat is not the right word, but there is intense amount of power going into that cling film. So if it can hold up to that, then a little bit of steam at 85 degrees ain't going to hurt it.
And just to finish off, I also did a recipe. I just made some cookies yesterday that we love. I've been using this recipe for years, and for the first
samples I see. Thanks for that. Generous. I do believe someone went home with about a dozen cupcakes the other day. And where's my cookie samples?
You know how I feel about bringing food in for you. I'm always a bit nervous. Rubbish. But for the first time ever, I actually weighed out, because it's all just a cup of this and a cup of that and a cup of something else. I actually weighed out. And for the first time, because normally I just grab the cup and it's all pretty straightforward. But the difference in my cup between the flour was way under, the sugar was way, it was just really interesting, the difference in my little standard cup measurement between desiccated coconut, plain flour, self-raising flour, and sugar.
Yeah. I mean, there are some...
I mean, the flour was out by 27 grams.
Yeah. So there are some recipes, like... kind of getting off topic, but let's say scones, right? I've watched millions of people make scones before. Where I used to live up the bush, we would have the Country Women's Association, scone bake-off and all that sort of stuff. And these scones were unbeatable. And people would use just whatever cup they had, but that was the entire cup for measuring the entire recipe. So you'd have 2 cups of self-raising flour measured in this particular cup, and then you'd have a cup of cream measured in the same particular cup, and then maybe a cup of lemonade measured in the same particular cup. So at least you had consistency, right? But unless your recipe states you need 1 cup, 1 cup, 1 cup, and that you use all the same cup, it will generally work. But if there's 3/4 of a cup and 1 cup, and you have what's supposedly an accurate 3/4 of a cup measuring cup, and then you have what you think is a cup measuring cup, your recipe's going to be out.
Well, I did notice yesterday that...
That's why I always say, it's just scales.
Yeah.
Digital scales are...
Well, I did digital scales for this recipe for the first time, and I must say it came together quicker, and it didn't take me as long to get them onto the onto the sheets, and the recipe says 10 to 12 minutes. In the combi steam oven, 8 minutes, no more.
Yeah.
Like, no more. So it makes a big difference in them.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that about custards. And
yeah, the world's turned to custard. But yeah, give custards a go. They're really
anything
good.
Out of it,
any
Bain
sort of Bain
Marie
Marie type cooking. I can't, like, off the top, I mean, you kind of sprung this on me. We didn't really plan it.
Well, we never plan any of them.
I know.
Paul,
but off the top of my head, any sort of Bain Marie style cooking, absolutely, yeah. And you don't need to, generally, unless I think of something in the meantime, and we might report back to you. But generally, there's not much where you can't use your steam oven in place of a Bain Marie.
Great. Well, thank you for that.
No worries.
Thanks for listening, guys.
See
Take
you later.
care. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this podcast as we explore home cooking in a modern world. We'd love you to subscribe, and for more information, please go to our website, cookingwithsteam.com.